Is your magic meter running low? Well, we've got a cure for you. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePauli, and today on the show I have my friend Chris joining me. Hey Chris, what's going on?
Hello. Nothing much. What's going on with you?
Well, we recently experienced the newest land at Disneyland Resort, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, and let's just jump into that conversation right now.
It's time to dive into today's Disney dialogue.
All right, now this was kind of a full circle moment for me. We went opening day, Friday, May 31st, 2019. And I was actually in the room when this land was announced 4 years ago at the D23 Expo. And I just remember, like, in that moment, really being like, gosh, 4 years. It feels like forever. But at the same time being like, I know this is going to be here before we know it. And watching them build it throughout the entire, whenever you visit Disneyland, you can see it directly from the Mickey and Friends parking garage. It was, first flat land and then started building up, and it's just, it's here. It's surreal.
Yeah. I remember talking about it for years, waiting in line and stuff at the park. Just kind of wondering if they'd hit the timetable and have it open on time and stuff. And
so that's the interesting thing. So it opened earlier than expected, but also not quite finished. So that's an interesting little situation we're in. But folks, just so you know, this week I'm actually doing 5 episodes all about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. This episode right here is just kind of going to be an overview of day one and the whole process and everything. And then throughout the week, I'll get into more specific topics. But right now, we're just talking about kind of an overview. And I will say, you are a diehard Star Wars fan, or how would you put yourself?
Yeah, I'd probably be just below, like a hair below diehard. You know what I mean? I'm not getting a tattoo.
Okay.
But at the same time, like I grew up with it. I love Star Wars.
I will tell you, that would not be a bad idea for a place in Galaxy's Edge, though. A tattoo parlor.
Oh man, they make some bank.
I think that would be really profitable. And, I don't know, man. It's not quote unquote family friendly, but I mean, it's as family friendly as a bar, right?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, except there's not like 10 years down the line, there's not like a regret moment where you associate Batuu with like this horrible decision to forever mark your body.
Sure, but I don't think a lot of people get tattoos and don't regret it. I don't know. I think theming wise, it could fit.
Sure.
We got a barbershop on Main Street in Magic Kingdom. Why not a tattoo parlor and a Black Spire Outpost?
Too big a liability, man. If you like coat check or item check stuff, they won't let you put an open Coke bottle in there because it's a liability. Yeah. So there's no way they're gonna be like inking you up.
Anyway, that's so funny. I just want to start with the whole reservation process. Now, if the listeners don't know, currently right now from May 31st through June 23rd, the only way you can get into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland is with a reservation. How do you get a reservation? You either stay at a Disneyland Resort hotel or you signed up for a reservation. This was several weeks ago at this point, where you could sign up online. It was a free reservation. Of course, you had to buy a theme park admission to get in once you got the reservation, but it was free, and it started at 10 a.m., and by 12 noon that day, the reservation for through the June 23rd were gone. So 2 hours to fill up thousands of slots. So luckily, I got a day one reservation. I gotta be honest, that was not my goal at all. I was not like, I need to be there opening day. My goal was, I just need to get there during the period of time of reservations, because I know once June 24th comes, it's going to be a completely different game. It's going to be, first of all, there's going to be no time limit. They're going to let in more people. It's going to be very, very, very different. So I was just happy to get any time during the reservation period. Luckily, got first day, which I guess was pretty cool. But I thought the online reservation process was awesome. This is something new. I can't think of anything like this that they've done before. Usually opening days of new attractions or lands, it's just you show up really early and you wait to get in, and very, very, very long lines. And that was not our experience.
No, it turned out to be a really good process and seemed to really help manage the crowds. But after the 60th, and with the anticipation of this and rolling out this new system, I bet you're going to see a lot more of these reservation systems in place for many more Disney events going forward, which is going to be kind of great. But at the same time, it's the same thing with the iPhone when it happened and stuff. Once people got wind that you could do it, like sign up and get your iPhones early, they're crashing AT&T servers and like all this kind of stuff, and it gets crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think that it caught a little people off guard this year because it was a new system, it was a new process. People weren't really they didn't know what to expect, and it worked out well for us this time. But I think it's going to be pandemonium, maybe in the future if they continue down this road.
Now, it's interesting. There are a few points there. Number one, I hope that they use this system in the future. I don't know if they will for like. So my big question is so currently right now only one of the two attractions is open, Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. So I'll be really curious to see whether or not they do this when Rise of the Resistance opens, because that's like one standalone. I personally hope they do. I really liked it, but I'm being a little bit unfair. I had a very good experience with the reservation system online. I have heard of people who were like on there trying to get them, and it just never went through, which honestly surprised me because at the time I was actually having internet issues and I was worried about the connectivity of the internet, like causing delays and issues trying to get a reservation. But I did hear of people who like kind of had that and tried and didn't get them.
Well, one of the things I think you're going to see for sure, they opened up the hotel reservations before the online reservations.
Yes.
And so people panicked and like booked up hotel rooms solid to get their reservation. And then the second that they had the online free reservations, those many of the same people who camped out for those hotel reservations did the same thing for the free ones, got them.
Yeah.
Oftentimes through other buddies and stuff, got multiple ones.
Yep.
And canceled all of their hotel rooms in the process. So I think Disney going forward will probably maybe associate or try to associate something with your thing. Like, for example, your email address, your phone number, something, your account, your Disney account.
They do.
But they probably won't let you, if you book a hotel, they probably won't let you book a free. They probably won't let you try to do a free one because they're not going to want people to back out like that.
Yeah, now it is interesting because they are still... Galaxies is just now officially open, and they are still promoting get a hotel room. So, like,
and they were booked before.
I don't know if they were 100% booked, but I'm sure they were more booked than they are now. Because, like you said, a lot of people canceled. People I know canceled their hotel rooms. But it's a little shocking to me that they're not booked up for. We're heading into the summer season, and I don't know. I'm a little surprised. I mean, Southern California residents are out of school for the most part at this point. So it's a little surprising that they're not fully booked up.
But that's the thing. If you're a SoCal resident, you're not going to want to book a hotel.
You're thinking about getting a hotel to go back.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's also just like me, my wife, and my one young kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus like a whole family,
yeah,
minivan, dogs to worry about.
So, I mean, to me, I'm a fan of the reservation system. I really liked it. I would like to see it used in the future. I don't know necessarily for standalone attractions. Basically, anything that's going to be massively popular, I'd much rather deal with that than get in line to get a fast pass or pay for, a special event or whatever. I think this was a fair system. I mean, now you are a bigger Star Wars fan than me. I like Star Wars a lot, but you really love Star Wars. And you didn't even attempt to get a reservation when this first started. So what was that about? Was that like, obviously I pay attention to what's going on in the Disney universe. Had you heard about the reservation system? Were you like, I'm not even going to try because it's going to be too crazy? Like, what was the thought behind not trying?
There was a couple of things. One was that kind of information was kind of... unless you go looking for it actively, and hunt through the different like press releases or blogs or anything like that online, it's not exactly the easiest information to get a hold of. You know what I mean? And It just happened that I was super busy. I heard that there was a reservation system in place, or they were going to be putting it on, but then at the same time, it was like two different dates. One was for the hotel thing, and they didn't announce when the other one was going on sale yet. And I'm like, so it just got to the point where I didn't feel like keeping all these balls juggled in my mind. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, the second thing I'd say is, back with Mickey's
Halloween Party.
I went one of the first years they ended up doing that kind of thing out here, and it was glorious. It was one of the best. They didn't overbook it. The park was, I wouldn't say empty, but it was not crowded.
Yeah.
It felt really good. You could run around. You could do rides like you maybe couldn't do during the days.
Sure.
It was really fantastic. And then after that, they just loaded it up. And so like years later, a couple years in a row after that, it felt like noon on a Saturday at night there. So it just got to the point where between all those things, I figured it was just going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, now, it's interesting that you say that because I wouldn't... First of all, I think a lot of people, like in my case, and I apologize to anybody who wasn't able to get a reservation because of situations like this, but like I signed up 5 friends because that was... Or you could do yourself plus 5. Now, 2 of those 5 actually didn't end up being able to make it. So only 4 of the 6 were used. So I think a lot less people show up than kind of expected. And I think Disney knows that. I think they allow you to overbook it. But also, this 3-week period, I think, is a real testing ground. Before this, for a couple weeks, they had cast member previews. And now we're in this period of the reservation system. And I think that it's kind of nice because they're easing the cast members into this. And it was like, if any of you are picturing this whole shoulder to shoulder, walking through this land, no, it's only like that when you're lining up to get in. Once you're in there, it was honestly some of the most leisure walking around a theme park that I've ever done. It was not overcrowded by any means.
Yeah,
There were some long waits for things, but it wasn't overcrowded.
Yeah, you could hold a lightsaber straight out and twirl around without hitting somebody.
Totally.
Like easily, you know what I mean?
Did you do that?
I did that a few times. But yeah, no, that's it was very, very leisurely. But the other thing that makes me wonder about that though is when you signed up for those reservations, did they say on there, like there was this whole confusion at the beginning where it was like, are they going to check IDs for each person that you mentioned in the reservation that you signed up or not? We weren't quite exactly sure at first, and then information came later.
Sure.
So, like, how many people went, oh, I can sign up for 5 people? I'm going to sell these things. And, like, signed up 5 fake names.
Yeah.
And then they figured, I'll get rid of them. And then...
Well, that's why they check ID.
But was that information up front, or was that information that you got later? Because that might explain some of the absentees at the... in the land itself, because a lot of people might have gone, oh crap, and then they only had 1 of the 5 that they were able to bring in.
Yeah, I don't think that was a majority of people signing up. I'm sure there were a percentage. Did they mention it before? I don't know, to be honest. Here's the thing about the checking of IDs with Disney events. They usually do not follow through on their word. Like, I have many, 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 many events where it's like, we're going to check everybody's ID, and they've checked, like, the person that signed up, didn't check my guess. Or even more so, like, I took a Disney Vacation Club tour recently, and they were like, the person on the phone was adamant, make sure you bring your Disney Vacation Club ID, they're going to be checking it. Never checked it. The guy walked with part of the tour, great, come along. Like, it's just, they don't, even at, like, the Halloween parties and stuff, I feel like they say it's going to be more involved than it is, and they never check the IDs. They checked everybody's ID for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Like, your entire party was checked. So if any of you are out there thinking, hey, like even in my case, there were, as I said, 2 people that didn't show up, and I was thinking, hey, maybe I can bring in another friend. They're probably not going to check everybody's IDs. I'm telling you right now, they checked everybody's IDs. So if your friend's name is not on the list, do not attempt to bring them. It's going to be a waste of time. They will have, spent money to buy a ticket to the park that they can no longer use to get into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So just putting that out there. So it's an interesting... It was an interesting process. That process worked beautifully for me. Like, the first time around, I think we waited 15 minutes. I did go through a second time. Preston and I walked up, and got right in. So that was a smooth process as far as checking IDs, getting the wristbands. They did have to scan your wristband on the way out, which I found weird because they never did it again. I don't know what the purpose of that was, but... Wait,
so when you went with Preston, you didn't have to... There was no line. There was not a giant crowd that they let in at once? It was just...
Well, we went so you could get your wristband approximately... you could get it 2 hours before. We went an hour before because I was still in the land for the first time, and then hopped out, just went over, and there was no line. There were plenty...
Oh, yeah, okay.
So... You just walked in and did
That's
it.
for the restaurant. That's for the wristband.
For the wristband.
But you still had to wait in a long line to get into Galaxies.
Oh, yes. We waited like a half hour to get back into the land. So yeah, as far as, I mean, parking was no problem. You know, there's a sphere of, oh, God, I mean, I did the 60th anniversary. I showed up at like 3 or 4 in the morning. I waited in those long lines, dealt with the traffic and all that stuff. We literally left at 6 a.m. from Burbank. That's typically like over an hour drive to Anaheim. There was like barely any traffic, just normal traffic. You get off the ramp to Disneyland. There was no backup. We pull into the parking garage. There was no backup. We go through security. There was no line. We got on a tram. There was no wait. We get to Disneyland Gate. There was no line to get into Disneyland. Like,
you just walk right through the turnstile. But that's the thing, is like we figured it would be one of two ways, right?
Yeah.
It was going to either be like the Carmageddon that they talked about like years ago, where everybody was so like deathly afraid of the crowds that people stayed far enough away, or it would be a madhouse, and it turned out to be the good kind of people stayed away.
Yeah, now what I hear, so we had the second group, and I purposefully did this so that I wouldn't have to wake up in the middle of the night, but we had the group that was let in at 11 a.m. The 8 a.m. group, from what I hear, it was a bit crazier in the morning. I wasn't there to experience it, but I did hear that it was a bit busier than what we dealt with, but still not unmanageable. You know, honestly, the unmanageable parts of the day were waiting in line for security. That was for merchandise. That was where we spent most of our time.
We'll get into this in a different podcast, but yeah, that was a bigger issue because a 4-hour window at Galaxy's Edge, when you finally get in there, there's essentially 4 to 5 things you can pretty much do throughout there. Mm-hmm. One being just kind of explore around and check out some of the data pad stuff, which I loved, and the merch and all that kind of stuff.
On the app, yeah.
Yeah. And then the stores, the merch. Like, just exploring is one thing. Then there's like build a droid, build a lightsaber, the cantina, and the Millennium Falcon ride.
Yeah.
So those are like the 5 things that you can knock out. Depending on what you choose to do, you might just be able to do a single one thing because of the lines for certain merch and stuff like that. But we can get into that later.
Yeah. And let's see. So when they get, as far as opening day was concerned, they took everybody and lined them up over at Hungry Bear, and that was the only entrance. The other 2 entrances were used as exit only. And, you know, you're held there for a little bit. I think we waited maybe a half hour or so in a group of people. And then they opened the floodgates, let you in. And I am curious, what was your first impression when you walked in?
I don't know if the entrance to Hungry Bear is the best entrance to get an impression. To get an impression. When you first walked in there, you had some ships, like maybe an X-wing or something over on the right, and a lot of people were stopping to take some pictures and stuff like that, and they were just kind of sitting off to the side with like a little gate, a little railing separating you from them and from the ships and stuff, which was certainly cool. You certainly got a little bit of that Star Wars vibe to it, and then as you kind of round the corner more, it starts opening up some buildings and whatnot, and it's funny because it may be because I live in Southern California, but the kind of adobe, stucco, sun-bleached aesthetic of this like desert planet is very much similar to stuff I see kind of every day out here. Now, granted, some of the architecture is a little bit different, and there's some kind of found objects being like reclaimed and turned into other things that you don't necessarily see all the time. But either way, maybe my awe factor was kind of dulled a little bit by that. Also, the angle of approach, when you come through that complete left side, you just see a couple of buildings a little bit here or there. It's not that grand. Whereas if you come through either the other 2 entrances, the one right down the middle, you kind of walk right in and you see this whole marketplace, bazaar kind of thing in front of you, which is amazing. Or you come in through the First Order entrance and you see like the Millennium Falcon and the whole First Order.
No, I don't think you couldn't really see the Falcon.
The Falcon is a little bit around the corner, but there's First Order ships.
Sure,
and like all the other.
But that's what surprised me was I really thought at least one of the 3 entrances you'd walk in and it would be like, oh, there's the Falcon. Like my I think the closest situation like this for me was the first time I experienced the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Orlando. When you turn that corner and see Hogwarts, I'm telling you, as a person who does not care for the Harry Potter books nor the movies, I had chills rushing through my body and like literally teared up when that music swelled and I saw that castle. It was an impression like I was really hoping I would get walking into Galaxy's Edge, and I did not. I didn't have that moment. I'm sure there were some that did it. I didn't see any grown men crying or anything. I didn't get that sense of awe that I kind of expected.
Again, part of that I think is dulled by the fact that we had an agenda coming into this place. At least I did.
Sure,
And
but so did I when I went to Harry Potter.
I mean, maybe on opening day you did, but like, it wasn't the situation where you can kind of wander into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and just behold it all and enjoy it and take your time and really kind of experience the twists and turns and the kind of revelations, beyond those that I think they wanted you to have.
Yeah.
Because I think the day one opening, the crowds are going to be ravenous for stuff. You know that if you need to make a decision right through the gate, what you want to do and how you want to go about it. Because if you don't, you're going to be locked out of stuff. They're going to cap lines. They're going to run out of stuff. It's just like, so for me at least, a lot of that was me charging around, running through this park. And some of those reveals I think were lost at least the first time for me because I didn't get a chance to kind of like savor it as I went. It was just kind of like, oh, there's a falcon. Where's the lightsaber place? It's that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the funny thing. We didn't see the falcon until a good 2 hours into our visit, I would say, because we went right to build a lightsaber. And that process, we will get into this on our merchandise episode, but that process was crazy and kind of poorly managed. It's day one. I get it. It will get better, I hope. But it was not managed well. And so finally, at one point, we're like, well, let's step out for a second and go see the Falcon. And we did. So at that point, I'd say it was kind of a leisurely moment.
I'd say this really quick before we move on. But I thought the Star Wars thing was definitely managed well. I think
the lightsaber thing?
The lightsaber thing was definitely managed. What did I say?
The Star Wars thing.
The lightsaber creation was definitely managed well, considering it was day one and what they were dealing with and how they were doing it. For me, it wasn't necessarily planned from like the blueprint of the park up that well, because there's one room, one build basically room, and if you were anticipating, I mean, they had to be anticipating the kind of wants and that people are going to have to build these things, and there could have been more room to do it, get more people through, kind of make that process a little less like only 100 people in the next 5 hours are going to get to do this, and manage some of those FOMOs,
Yeah. We'll definitely touch more on that in the merchandise episode. But I do want to say, I am curious, had you ever seen this level of detail in a land, in a theme park?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Yes and no. Like, detail-wise, like, yes, I think you get that level of detail with the Hogwarts parks.
Okay.
It's very immersive and stuff. The thing that's different is there's two things for me. One is this is almost so immersive as to be blasé at times. And what I mean by that is like there's no signage, right? Mm-hmm. So you're like, oh, that's cool. But it looks like you're just walking around and like kind of a nifty like neighborhood thing. You know what I mean? Like it's so kind of signage free that it doesn't feel like.
What do you
you're
mean?
in
Like
land.
You don't see like the ride sign and stuff, or
Yeah, there's no like when you walk through Cars Land,
okay.
right? There's crazy stuff everywhere.
I mean, but that makes sense for Radiator Springs.
Of course. Now, but I'm just saying that's what you're used to. When you walk through Harry Potter's and stuff, there's like signs for the Green Dragon Inn or all this other kind of fun stuff that makes you really kind of feel like you're there. This, I know that the Star Wars universe they wouldn't necessarily have big old signs out to have stuff, so that's what they were going for, and I think they succeeded. But it's a weird thing because your mind is trained in one way for theme parks. And it's so not that it almost doesn't feel like you're in one, if that makes sense. And then on top of that, the biggest thing for me was I don't think I heard any music. Maybe I blanked it out, but I heard almost nothing. Whereas when you walk through Harry Potter, the Wizarding World, or if you walk through Cars Land, or if you walk, there's always some kind of music pumping through the air of that's appropriate for the franchise and stuff. And this was just quiet. You heard birds chirping. You heard people kind of like, murmuring. You heard, the sounds of the marketplace and stuff. But like, it wasn't. You didn't have like cantina music just like blasting out of like.
I mean, you did if you walk by the cantina. In fact, it's funny because when you're waiting for the cantina, you can hear like the muffled sound of music blasting, which is a completely separate soundtrack. Like it's not the actual music from inside because it's not that loud inside there. It's loud, but it's not like deafeningly loud. So they have muffled music playing out. It's interesting because I did want to touch upon the music. Now, if the listeners don't know, John Williams actually wrote an original score for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which is awesome in and of itself. John Williams is the man who has written the music for every single Star Wars saga movie and the whole, Skywalker saga, which is incredible to think of. I mean, he started back in 77 and he's still doing it with the one coming out this December. And so he wrote original music, which is crazy. But you're right, it is not super obvious. It's there. I heard it for sure. But it's not like it doesn't swell and you know what I mean? Like, you don't notice it and hum along or just kind of like just take in like, oh, I'm in a land and there's there's a film score playing like there is in other places. Yeah, I don't know if I dislike that or not, to be honest. Like, don't get me wrong, I love theme park music as much as the next person, but I kind of like the fact that it was subtle and that you didn't always hear it. You would hear it as you were walking by certain areas or even if you're talking about just the soundtrack of the land, like when we were waiting in line, I gotta be honest, like the soundtrack of the sounds coming through the bushes and stuff, you could hear little creatures ruffling around and such, like that got me kind of amped up and excited. I do wish maybe there was a little bit of swelling music as you enter the land, like at the entrance points. There wasn't too much of that. I will say, I don't think at any point I heard the classic bam, bam, ba-da-ba-bam, bam, like nowhere in the land. I don't even think in the Millennium Falcon ride. I could be wrong about that, but it was not obvious if it was there. Yes, but here's the thing. The beauty of this place is the subtleness. And I think it's a very interesting contrast to a lot of what you expect from a Disney theme park or theme parks in general. Yeah. And it's one of those situations where it's weird. It's weird because it's different. It's different. It's weird because when you go to Disney, you're expecting, for lack of a better terms, like just that Disney magic, right? Sure. That in your face Disney magic, like almost stimulation overload, theme park experience. And this is absolutely the opposite of that. This almost feels like a quiet resting place to kind of take a break from all that stuff, which is awesome. And a lot of people who maybe don't like that in-your-face magic will go to Disneyland literally just to walk from the main gate to Star Wars Land, hang out there for as much as they want during the day, and then just leave. Yeah. And not do anything else. I mean, yeah, there will be a lot of people that would love to do that. So now, I specifically asked you this question about whether or not you had ever seen this level of detail, because you mentioned, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter here at Universal Hollywood, but I think the big argument would be when you look around yourself in certain areas of Wizarding World, you can see other locations of the park. In Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, you cannot, except for one exception. I will say I did see the top of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. But it works because it looks like a desert mountain spire. It works. Now, some people did report, I didn't see this personally, and I think you had to be on a second level of something to see this, but some people say you can see the Mickey and the Magical Map tent, and if that's the case, that's a little bit upsetting to know. Like I said, I didn't personally see this, but for all intents and purposes, you are fully secluded in this land. You're not seeing anything else. And that's like a level of detail that I had thoughts in my head when I was there where I was like, okay, I legitimately right now do not feel like I'm in Disneyland. And I was like, how cool and how sad all at the same time. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around the thought that I was in Disneyland, even to the point that, like, when I exited the park, I was, like, a little bit like, okay, where am I? Which direction do I need to go to get to wherever I'm going? Like, and this is a person who spends a lot of time in Disneyland, And it was bizarre in that sense. And I was like, okay, I guess mission accomplished. But it kind of solidified the fact to me that Disneyland Park is not the right place for this land. It should have been its own separate park. If it wasn't going to be, I guess DCA would have made more sense. But I don't know. It was weird. And to the point that I felt like I wasn't at Disneyland, that I kid you not, and this is going to sound stupid, several times throughout the day, I thought I was in Orlando. And I had never thought about this before, but Disneyland Park and Disneyland Resort in general, I guess Cars would be the biggest argument here, has never had a land this insanely immersive. Whereas I think, over at Walt Disney World, Pandora, the World of Avatar, it's still fairly new, but has this setup. To me, I would argue Disney's Animal Kingdom as a whole has this level of detail throughout the entire park where, although there are separate lands, if you discount some of the ridiculousness over at Dinoland USA, the whole thing feels like this immersive world that you're just like lost in. World Showcase, kind of the same thing over at Epcot. And I was like, wow, Disneyland, I don't think has had this. I mean, maybe you could say Toontown, but it's just, looks quote unquote cheap. I don't know. It was a new level for Disneyland that I hadn't realized we were missing.
I think that pretty much explains it for me, which is that level of detail was on a film set quality.
Oh yeah,
experience, right? Whereas other parts of Disney or the theme parks, they bring you the world and all its wackiness and goofiness with it. And there are things that they just have to design around or do whatever, and they kind of justify it. Or there's speakers playing out of like old tires in the bushes. Something where you're like, okay, whatever. Like they needed music, they got it. It's blended in enough. Like whatever. This is this is camera ready.
Yeah.
For a film set. You could film anything. I mean,
you could absolutely shoot a Star Wars movie here, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we start seeing online content shot there for Disney parks, or they could legitimately, if they wanted, make a Disney Plus Star Wars series in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
It's beautiful. It's just it's unbelievably beautiful, very transportive, and it also is very subtle and enjoyable. So like,
it's just different. It's really different for Disneyland Park. The closest thing I would say that Disneyland Park has is Indiana Jones Adventure and the queue for that, but that's one attraction.
But this is the thing. Anytime Disney promotes Star Wars, it's in your face. It's like the swelling of John Williams' music, lasers, shooting stuff like the Millennium Falcon, deacon and ducking and like turning through. It's this high adrenaline, high octane world that they promote, because it's Star Wars. This experience is like a quiet fishing trip.
Yeah.
Compared to
I know a lot of people that are going to love that. Yeah.
It's really interesting and a unique feel to this whole land. It's beautiful and relaxing, and it's so enjoyable. And I think it's just one of those things where if you come in super stoked and excited and like adrenaline rushing and stuff like that, it is a weird come down as you kind of spend those 4 hours. Like, because the land is so enjoyable and relaxing that you're just kind of being soothed down into like just a chill vibe, you know what I mean? And it's different than if you were to like go, Cars Land, and you get all worked up and stuff, and you go in there and then you get revved up with,
pun intended,
pun intended, with the frozen yogurts and the sound of the speedway and like high octane this and it's all that kind of stuff. But this is different. It's a very peaceful place.
Yeah, it really is. Everything there makes sense. Like to be there, the food is themed well. The attraction signs aren't in your face. It's just all, it was
not only in your face, they're not there. There's no stanchions, there's no metal railings that guide you through stuff.
There are none. As far as like in the queue for Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, you'll walk through
hallways.
I guess.
But they're built into the.
Yeah, there really aren't any stanchions at all, which is weird. It's weird.
It feels like a part of the world. It doesn't feel like a theme park.
Yeah.
It just feels, which is what they wanted, which they succeeded in. Hands down.
Now, one of the other things that went on, of course, first of all, applause to the cast members who have opened this land. Congratulations, you've done a fantastic job. Some of you really enjoy your job as far as role playing is concerned, and this is all.
And then there's a few that do it.
Yeah.
but not to the, this guy saunters up with like Maui gyms and Crocs or something, you know what I mean? And he's like, many moons, or whatever. And I'm like, okay. We get
Rising
it.
moons.
Rising suns or whatever.
It is funny. Some people get really into it. Some of the cast members get really into it. And like, when we were there to build lightsabers, we're like, is this where the lightsabers get built? Oh, no. We sell scrap metal here. Like, so it's always difficult when you're trying to get a legitimate answer about something that you just need to know. Like, this is a bad example, but like, where's the restroom or whatever? And they're just like, we don't have restrooms. And like, they use the terms that they use or whatever the heck.
Which I think is funny, but you don't know them. So like, at one point she's like, all image scanners are over on this side. And there's a thing in the app, the Disney Let's Play app, or the Play app, I think.
Play Disney Parks
app or whatever. There's a thing where you have a device that you can. It's super fun. It's one of the cool things I want to talk about when you're exploring. It adds a whole new dimension to the world that I loved. But they have this device, and one of the things you can do on it is scan images,
sure,
or whatever, and then decode stuff. So she's like, all image scanners over here. I'm like, what's an image scanner? Like, what's the thing? And she's like, where we scan your image and put it on paper. And I'm like. So a picture, but like my
photo op, yeah.
But my whole point is like, it's really weird because some of that lingo intersects. So like scan imaging, and then there's a whole part of the park that you're supposed to play where you scan stuff, but they're using it in terms of photography. You know what I mean? Like, it's just bizarre, and I don't think everybody's on the same page with it. It's like I don't think they're on the same playbook. I think they just make up their own.
I mean, legitimately, you're right. There are some cast members that really take it seriously and others that, like, don't, and I wish that there was more consistency with that. Now, I will say at one point, Preston will be coming on the show to talk about the Play Disney Parks app, and as you're playing, you gain credits, and there's no explanation of what these credits mean. And I'm like, I assume they mean nothing. I'm like, but then to make it even more confusing, when you buy something, like say something was $12, they'll say to you, that's 12 credits. And I was like, wait a second, can I use like these hundreds of credits I have in my app as dollars? And they're like, no. And so like, oh, okay. So like, that's a little confused. Like, I didn't actually think you could, but that's a little confusing, So it's interesting. You got to get used to the lingo. That is one of those things. Now, I will say, at the beginning of this, I said I really want to get in during that first 3-week period just to have the reservation and not have to deal with, like, the insane crowds. But on top of that, my goal was also, I really wanted to see what the Imagineers wanted to do. Because what happens is, in the theme park world, it'll come out, they're still testing. For a few months, they're going to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and you slowly start to see these things drip away. And it's like, okay, this lingo is not working. Or like, I remember when the Wizarding World of Harry Potter opened, like the big thing was like, everybody's going to have a British accent. That didn't last very long. So I wanted to experience it the way that the initial intention was. And I accept the fact that some of this is going to go away. We'll talk about it later, but like the lightsaber thing, I have a feeling that process is going to become a 15-minute show versus a 20-minute show or whatever. They're just going to be changes.
And that again, we can get into it a little bit more later, but there was an intent. It makes more sense to have one room and to have 14 people if you go through the intended way that at least I heard was intended, which was through this kind of Let's Play app where you do some missions and you choose a side of the Resistance or the First Order or whatever you're doing, and then you basically have a fun little quest line throughout the park in which you then get like summoned if you want to do a lightsaber to do that, and you get a password and you have to speak the password to somebody at the junkyard and they'll bring you back, and you do like that whole experience of going on a journey and creating that lightsaber and stuff would certainly cut down in an ideal world on the crowd sizes, except everyone is a lightsaber. Everyone is going to want to be doing this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's $200, so that's going to dissuade quite a few people. But there's a lot of
there's
people.
no parent on Earth who has chucked in however much money it is to take the fam to Disneyland who's drawn the line at a $200 lightsaber. No one.
Tourists, yes. Locals, no. But in any case, one of the other things I want to touch upon as far as the cast members is I loved the detail of costumes in this land. Usually I don't pay much attention to costumes. It's just not something I naturally notice. This land, I mean, these, once again, like Galaxy's Edge feels like walking onto a movie set. These cast members look like they walked out of a Star Wars movie. I love the fact that not everything is uniform. They've set up a situation where, like, basically, depending the role you're playing, you have options. You can put a vest on, you can wear this necklace, you can wear this headband, or whatever it is that they have. The cast member has options to mix and match things so that not everybody looks exactly the same. And I loved this.
That was fantastic. But the tricky part about it for me was there were times I was looking for a cast member, and it took me a minute to find one because I was like, they
that's
blended
why
right in, which is great.
That's why they don't allow adults to wear the robes and stuff. You can purchase robes there. They don't let you put them on. In Wizarding World, I know people wear their wizard robes all the time, but they don't allow it in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So I get it for that reason. I also will say
the robes though wouldn't bother me because those are Jedi robes. There are no cast members dressed as Jedi.
Okay.
So like I wouldn't mind it if that was the case. And they had an opportunity with the app and smartphones already. They could do an augmented reality thing where if you hold your phone up and turn it around in that park, you could be able to see literally nameplates over cast members who are walking through, or if you hold it up to like a building, it'll have like a sign appear, there.
Yeah.
Like you could do some really cool futuristic.
Listen,
things.
they're not done. Like
Sure.
we're certainly. I mean. Gosh, there's so much to talk about. I do want to hit on something before I forget, though. I can't remember if you were with me or not, but every cast member has, the name tags on like they would anywhere at a Disney park. But of course, these are Star Wars specific. They're written in a different language than, in English underneath. And in the past, they used to sell these name tags for guests in the Disney parks. Were you with me for this? Yeah, so there was somebody who essentially said, hey, I had one of those. They asked me to take it off, and the reason is because they tell children, if you have if you run into an issue, if you get lost or whatever, look for somebody with a name badge on it to help you out. And, that's a cast member, somebody who works there. So they didn't want children to be confused with people who work there and who didn't.
Sure.
So if you have one of those name badges as an adult, do not wear it to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge because you won't be able to.
I'd say this: the one that they specifically were talking about, because they had a couple of members of their party that still had the name badges on that looked like Galaxy Edge ones. Mm-hmm. They were wearing them just fine. They said the old school ones are the ones that they told them to take off, like for like Disneyland,
because a kid's gonna notice.
Yeah, but you're right in the sense that it's only a matter of time before they start telling you to take off the Galaxy Edge ones too.
Which makes sense. It's a good reason to encourage people not to wear them. So I approve that. But yeah, also characters around the land. There weren't. There were, we saw stormtroopers. I really liked seeing stormtroopers randomly walk out on rooftops and stuff. I thought that was cool.
First order troopers.
What did I call them?
Stormtroopers.
What's the difference?
I think I don't think they're all the same person. I don't know.
Well, they're not clones.
Yeah, they're not all clones.
Whatever.
I don't know. I don't think they're stormtroopers.
The people in the white trooper costumes. Sorry, we so offended somebody out there right now, but we apologize. But in any case, you'd see them walking around with Kylo Ren. Rey was around. I never ran into her. Like, she was kind of more in a specific spot. You had to go to meet her. But there were some characters. There were not a ton of characters. Never saw Chewbacca. And
I don't think you're going to see any legacy characters.
Chewbacca, I hear, yeah. So you'll see characters that are in the newer films, like the Disney Star Wars films. So Chewbacca will definitely... Chewbacca was supposed to be a meet and greet in the Millennium Falcon in that waiting room. And they were like, this holds up the process. Get it out of here. But that was the original intention. There was a lot of original intentions. They were supposed to be... Are they wampas? What are those big, like, the ones that look like woolly mammoths but live in the desert in... A New Hope, I think. They were supposed to have like animatronics of those walking around. There's supposed to be droids rolling around. None of that is ready for a couple of reasons. I think number one, they're not ready, and number two, they're like, we're not rolling these out until the crowds die down. There will be a summer.
I was surprised they didn't have like planes like on wires like shooting overhead or something.
Well, you could hear planes talking about soundtrack. We were talking about the music earlier. I loved that throughout the day you just heard like you heard stuff in the sky. You didn't see it, but you heard stuff flying by, and that was really cool because it was just done randomly throughout the day. Not too much that it was like it was not often enough so that when it did happen, you actually noticed it. It was cool. And but yeah, there's going to be a summer, I bet, where we get that big announcement of this summer, these droids will be joining us at Galaxy's Edge, and like they'll be introducing all those things eventually because the popularity is not going to die down for a long time, I'm sure. And we'll see that stuff. We'll see when Rise of the Resistance opens. That's a whole new level of this park or this land. So there's a lot of stuff going on. It's not ready. I shouldn't say that. It's not finished, but it will never be finished, right? The famous Walt Disney quote, as long as there's imagination left in the world.
And that makes me wonder, though, like, as far as the story goes and the lore goes and stuff, you know, they talk about Luke Skywalker and stuff like that as legend in the parks. You'll never see Luke walking around and stuff. But I wonder if they plan on evolving this world as the film universe evolves, right? Because, like, a location can be around for hundreds and thousands of years, whereas characters may come and go throughout and stuff. And it just makes me wonder how much they're going to... Is this going to be not a park frozen in time, but... Or a park that encompasses everything, like all the characters and stuff. But is this going to be an ever-changing Star Wars theme park? The location staying the same, but, like, the characters you see there... changing with the films, or is this going to be something, because they keep talking about your Star Wars story, and it makes me feel like they're going to keep that ever evolving, or at least I hope they do.
I 100% think that yes, they will. The thing that's going to start becoming wishy-washy to me is, so right now we still have a ton of Star Wars representation in Tomorrowland, and so right now, I think you can still meet Darth Vader, and probably, I don't know if they removed Kylo Ren from there or whatever, but, like, you can meet some legacy characters there.
I like the idea of, like, the retirement land for characters that are in and out of movies is Tomorrowland, whereas the Star Wars land is just current.
Yeah, so the big question is this. When and if, and I hope they do, I honestly, sorry Star Tours fans, this breaks my heart to say this, but I think all traces of Star Wars in the Disneyland Park should be removed except for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Now, if they do that, I feel like people are going to be like, where's Darth Vader? I want to meet Darth Vader. And I feel like if there's enough customer pushback over that, you'll eventually see Darth Vader in Galaxy's Edge.
But that's why I think, that's what I just said, is what I like about Tomorrowland, you can do a Star Wars, legacy.
Yeah, but do you really want that there?
If they do a facelift of Tomorrowland, I kind of do.
I don't.
Right? It is.
That's too much Star Wars in one place.
I mean, technically speaking, it's a Star Wars is less of a tomorrow franchise and more of a long time ago franchise.
Sure.
But so it's not necessarily going to be blowing your mind in terms of future technology and stuff, but I do think it would be good to get, maybe it's an add-on to actual Star Wars land at some point, where they carve out a little section where you can do meet and greets for all the legacy character stuff. I don't think they should be walking around.
That would break Imagineers' hearts who worked on this land. I mean, unless you time travel to a different time.
Well, then keep in Tomorrowland. Like, for me, they're going to want to see Luke. They're going to want to see Darth.
Put it at DCA. Put it at Disney California Adventure or something. I don't know.
Fine, maybe put it in DCA. It's fine. I'm just saying you got to have a spot where you can kind of pay reverence to the films of the past and the characters you saw growing up and stuff like that.
The land certainly pays reverence to the films of the past, but you're not seeing the characters
because
there are details that you've
got like little plushy dolls that look like they're handmade. Fine, but like as the movies and the films progress and as games and stories progress throughout the Star Wars thing, if this is a My Adventure thing and it's an ever evolving land, those are going to get cycled out. You got to have a place where you can go and see some of those classics, man.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate, right? Like I don't know if there's a win situation there, to be honest. It's both cases are not the best option. So one thing I want to say is there's a little bit of debate between us about this, but so a lot of people are like, how am I going to get an awesome picture in front of the Millennium Falcon without people in my shot? And they set up something beautifully yesterday where they did just that. They basically secluded an area where you could go get your picture taken with nobody behind you, just the Falcon. And, you buy the Disney photo and it had, day 1, May 31st, 2019 and all that stuff on it. Now you're saying that you read somewhere that was for that day only? They're not going to keep doing that?
It wasn't that I read. Well, yes, it was when you're in Disney, when you're in Galaxy's Edge and you launch the Play app, the Disney Play app, I had a notification pop up that just said, limited time or one day only, opening day, photo opportunity, and it showed a picture of basically right in front of the Millennium Falcon, and there was nobody behind. They had cleared away crowds from walking up and touching it and taking pictures because they had a photo station there set up to be able to do it. I think in the past, I mean, in the future, they might get rid of those photo op stations and just let people take pictures willy-nilly wherever they want, selfies or this or that. But you're going to have a million people behind you. Possibly they only meant there was a digital border, around the picture that said opening day, May 31st, 2019. Maybe that's what they meant with the one day only photo op, but
I have a feeling that's
you
what they
could
meant.
literally just take an online, you could just find one of those that somebody posts and slap that thing onto the bottom of your own picture, and
I think that's gonna always be there. I think that they'll sell too many photos there not to keep it there, and it was great. So like that opportunity, I'm pretty sure we'll be sticking around. So if you're worried about getting that awesome Millennium Falcon photo, you can certainly do it. I do want to ask you, as a gamer, you play a lot of video games. You actually write direct voiceover for video games. What did you think of the gameplay, real quickly, of Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run? Now, you didn't get to be a pilot, which I know is the dream role for you. Although I will say, real quickly, I did it twice with my buddy Preston. We were pilots the first time and engineers the second time. He preferred to be an engineer because he found being a pilot to be very stressful.
Yeah, so in video games, oftentimes video games are designed in a way to give you an illusion of choice. And what that means is that it's not very much on rails, and the story's very much on rails. And it makes, you can present options to people as if they're making choices and if what they choose matters, but oftentimes it doesn't. It makes me wonder how much of this Millennium Falcon, quote-unquote, gameplay is that. Because what happens is, I'm pretty sure if you just sent that thing off with no crew in it, it probably lands right back in the, whatever base it's in with sirens going off and it's like, oh no, you've taken some damage and stuff. And likewise, if you had an expert flight crew in there taking care of business, it probably still would run into some random stuff, and you'd have to have the engineers flick a switch or two to quote unquote, fix the ship, you know what I mean, or whatever it is. So
as a person who's ridden it 3 times, you're right. There are definitely the same moments that happen. You'll crash into different stuff or whatever, but I
just think it's a lot of flashing lights to give you the illusion of choice or that you're actually piloting something. But I actually don't think it.
Well, I mean, there are definitely times where I was like moving left or right. That I was like, why is this not moving like as good as it was last time? So like, there's a bit of loss of control. The original intention was not that. Like originally, this depended on your gameplay, and there were certain situations when it was in test mode where I was over in 20 seconds.
Yeah, but
they're like, we can't do this to people who waited 2 hours in line.
I was gonna say, like, you wait 2 hours in line, and some 4-year-old gets behind the joystick as a pilot, and you're like, oh my god, and there you go. It's like it's over. You've wasted the entire 2 hours. So I get why they're doing it. You just can't have. You cannot have gameplay the way that you think of gameplay.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to basically have some movement when you touch the joysticks. Some sirens go off when you press the flashing buttons. But for the most part, you're there for the visuals through the cockpit window.
Yeah. Now, I do want to mention, folks, that do have reservations and will be going during this 3-week period, that the way that it's set up, there's an hour overlap. So when your last hour is the next group's first hour. So when you are making plans for doing stuff, I will say the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, a lot of people would think that would be the long line the whole time. Reality is, during that first hour for a group, it's about an hour wait. There are moments toward the end of that third hour where it's 10 minutes or less, which is why I just got to repeat it several times. So if you're making plans to do this, just make sure whatever the big thing is that you want to do, whether it's Oga's Cantina or Smuggler's Run or whatever, make sure you're in there about 10 minutes before the next group comes in. So the last 10 minutes of your third hour, if that makes sense.
Well, I don't know.
Lightsaber is the exception because they cut it off. But at the same time,
no, the cantina they cut off too. Like 45 minutes in, it was like shut down because
no, they reopened the line. Because I did it, and I was actually the end of a line, and they said, it's shut down for now, come back, and 30 minutes later it was reopened. So they're controlling. They're basically trying to convince people, because I heard the cast member repeat this a billion times, go do something else, come back. We don't want you standing in line for 3 hours. Go do something else and come back. The only exception with that was the lightsaber situation that I saw. So just keep in mind, that last hour is when the next group will be coming in, and that is when things get crazy again. So basically your first hour and the last hour are when it's crazy. The 2 hours in the middle are when things are super, super manageable. So just plan and spend your time wisely as far as that's concerned. I will also say they didn't kick us out. I think a lot of people are naturally leaving before their 4 hour window. They're just like, okay, we saw it, we're done, or we're not willing to wait anymore for stuff, and they're done. Now, a couple of friends I was with did say they were asked several times throughout the day, like, hey, show us your wristband or whatever to make sure that they were still in this time slot. But when it came to that actual 4 hour moment, never had that problem. We stayed probably a half hour beyond when we were supposed to.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where we wondered, if we stuck it out, if we basically just wait until somebody tells us to leave, how much more could we stay if we wanted to? And ultimately we decided, let's not push that, let's just test that. Jeff had to go get his wristband for the next time slot anyways, and we were like, you know what, let's just I don't want to crowd it up for the next group, so we left kind of pretty much
30 minutes, something like that. And then Preston, I know, was an hour after his window, he was still in there. So as long
But it
as
makes me wonder what you can do, though. And
I was going to say, if you just want to explore, if you want to enjoy the app or whatever, use that last time. You most likely will not be able to get into a line for Smuggler's Run or anything like that. Like, they're going to check your wristband for that sort of situation. But if all you want to do is chill in the land, I'm pretty sure you're good. At least yesterday, on opening day, that was the case. And that surprised me a little bit, but it's something to keep in mind. I also want to mention, if you are one of the lucky folks who chose the time slot 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., congratulations, because you get sunset on Batuu, and it's beautiful. The transition from day to night is just beautiful in there. So obviously you can't change your reservation at this time, but maybe, I don't know how it works when you book the hotel, if you get to choose when to go, but that 5 to 9 p.m. or around that time, whatever it is, was really quite a great time slot to be in there. And overall, I'm a fan of the reservation process, and I really would love to see this done more and more. And would you go through all of this again once Rise of the Resistance opens?
Yeah, I would. I would go through it again, but only because I had the more stuff that you pack into the Star Wars land, the more time you're going to need. 4 hours for me, and based on what we did, and we'll talk about that on the next one, it just wasn't enough time.
No.
So I did one thing, which was build a lightsaber, and that was 3 hours and 45 minutes of waiting, basically in the blazing sun, which also Galaxy Edge could stand to use a few more shade, blankets or whatever over there, or whatever they strung across the top of some buildings to kind of give it a little more shade. But 3 hours and 45 minutes of just waiting to build this lightsaber outside. And then we ran to go to the Millennium Falcon, ride. We did single rider with the last 10 minutes of our 4 hour window. So there's not a lot of time to do stuff. But with Rise of the Resistance, I would definitely go back, and I'd probably do that. That'd be my one thing that I'd be like, screw it. If this is the 4 hours, it's 4 hours. And then maybe I'd try to get, if I had time, try to get the cantina, or I'd maybe try to look around some shops, because I didn't really get too much of a chance to do that within the world. Yeah. I did a lot of shops outside of the world, which we'll talk about later, but not necessarily in the world.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about as far as the lightsaber thing is concerned. We'll get to that on a future episode, but there's one thing I want to touch upon before we wrap up here. The opening ceremony for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge was 2 days before, and then a big gala in front of the Millennium Falcon with Bob Iger and Mark Hamill and George Lucas and Harrison Ford and Billy D. Williams. And it was they're important to have. Obviously, they're great marketing tools. And I think that this is a culmination of a ton of work for a ton of people, and you need to honor it in this grand opening ceremony situation.
I did wish that they had Finn or Rey there as well.
That's a little weird that they didn't.
It bummed me out that they didn't have any of the newer cast members there, especially in any of the newer female cast members there, because I don't know. I just think it could have added something.
Yeah, it was a little surprising they didn't feature those actors more, considering the land lives more in that world. But in any case, I just wish these things were rehearsed a little bit more. There was, if you haven't seen it, Disney Parks live streamed it. You can check it out on Disney Parks blog. But there is a moment that we referred to, I'd say at least 50 times yesterday.
It's so deliciously.
It's horribly
cringy,
wonderful.
but amazing, and I love it.
Yeah, so Harrison Ford, so basically, Bob Iger's like, hey, basically like, let's open this thing, and the Chewie hits something, the Millennium Falcon starts to operate and then crashes down and burns, and it's just like, oh man, if only there was someone who knew how to fix this. And you can hear like Harrison Ford in the distance being like, whatever the spiel was.
I think he just said like something like, I think I could help you out with that or something like that.
Yeah, and then, ladies and gentlemen, Harrison Ford, he comes out on stage, and they're basically saying, Harrison Ford, Han Solo, please fix the Falcon. And so what was supposed to happen was Harrison Ford was supposed to walk over, give a few bangs to the Falcon, and then it would just and
like start up, right? He'd Marty McFly it, right? He'd slam the steering wheel or whatever.
Totally.
And he knows where to punch it, and then like it would start back up.
Well, instead, Harrison Ford decided to ad-lib, a nice ad-lib, a very beautiful intention.
Yeah.
He was, wanted to honor Peter Mayhew, who was Chewbacca, of course, and recently passed away. And so the problem was, I don't think the person hitting the button to go was informed.
Yeah, the person had a trigger finger, ready. He was like all nervous and amped up. It's like his big moment was to like fire the Falcon back up when he bangs on it. But he just got like he got too nervous or something.
Yeah,
and got a little too jumpy, and so like.
So Harrison looks out in the audience and he goes, all right. And he like starts walking over to Bang and he goes, this one's for you. And then
Peter.
In the middle of that, you just hear the machine and then it goes, Peter, and then bangs it. So it's like it started up too early.
It's this beautiful miscue. And I read on Twitter somewhere somebody said, if I could recall the screen name, I would, or the handle, I would. But they said like the Millennium Falcon starting up off cue was one of the most Millennium Falcon things that it could have done, it was just beautiful. It was funny. The sentiment was there, but it was just a fun way to kind of end that opening ceremony and stuff.
I gotta say, this whole week we're doing Star Wars Galaxy's Edge episodes. I have different friends coming on. Chris, you will be coming back to talk about merchandise at a future episode, but also we're going to be doing episodes about food, the Play Disney Parks app, and of course Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show this morning, and what an epic adventure. We were there, day one. Nobody can ever take that away from us.
Day one, it was a beautiful day. It was a wonderful experience. And overall thoughts, this land for me is absolutely a 10 out of 10, but it's completely different than maybe what you expect. It's such a beautiful, peaceful place, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. And so, guys, I do want to remind you, head over to DisneyCoastToCoast.com. It is a new month, which means a new Disney music playlist has been created by me for your enjoyment. Of course, this month's theme is going to be Star Wars and all of my favorite music from the Star Wars films and beyond. So make sure you go sign up for that over at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. Just go click on playlist there. And other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.